Hey everybody, Professor Snart here checking in as we've just finished up, actually let me go to our due dates list here. We've just finished up our first unit, our introductions unit. At least that main due date, the Thursday. We now have a couple of days, right, flexibility to do the reply portion, although what you might have noticed is that if people are doing main posts early enough, maybe Wednesday and Thursday, that you can finish up the replies even by that Thursday. So you're not necessarily having to take advantage of that kind of extended or that double due date system that we've got. But hopefully you are feeling comfortable in the course, right? Getting used to where things are, how it's laid out, even getting a sense of sort of like the rhythm of the due dates as they come. So the Thursday work, right? And then that Sunday kind of extension a little bit for any reply portion that we've got. And our first unit, I think is really important as far as introducing each other, but it wasn't really a content unit for our course. But that's what we get into now with units 2 and then, right, moving forward. We do move towards a series of workshops where you'll be in a group with a bunch of people. There'll be a discussion board set up for your group. Everybody writes, like in this case, we start with a fiction workshop, a short story. So everybody writes a short story, you post it, you read everybody's, you provide feedback. We'll talk more about the specifics of how we do that as we get closer to that. And of course you can visit how the workshops work if you want a little preview. But it is important then, as we begin to get right through units 2 and 3, to be doing that unit work, but also kind of looking forward or looking ahead to our first workshop and then subsequent workshops that we've got, since you don't necessarily want to wait until everything in Unit 4 is complete and done and then start trying to write a short story. So even now it's a good time to be thinking towards the fiction workshop. Even as we learn some stuff, as you practice certain kinds of writing techniques here, think about how those might figure into your short story. And I'll say right now that there's no like assignment from me in the sense that you have to write about this subject matter or not this subject matter or whatever. So it's kind of up in the air. You can write almost in any like subgenre of fiction if you're interested in different styles of fiction, but we are doing a short story. Lengthwise, it's hard to say because again, stylistically, you could have sort of like just a longer, style, if that makes any sense. You're just wordier in a good way. If it's wordy in a bad way, that's a problem. But it's hard to say exactly. So we'd want something, I'm going to guesstimate between about 5 and 10 pages, probably double spaced. 5 would be pretty short, but again, you can often tell a really good story in very little space. And anything over 10 is okay, like from my perspective, but remember that you have multiple of these within your group that you'll have to be reading and commenting on. So if you're up in like the 20-25 page, which many short stories are, but for our purposes that's just practically a little bit unmanageable. If we had a whole bunch of those, it would be a little tough. So the length requirement is not really so much a requirement about the style or the content or anything. It's more just a practical concern with making the workshop sort of feasible in the time frame that we've got. So, but anyway, that's kind of coming down the road, something that needs to be in the back of your mind as we get through our next few units here. So our unit number 2 then gets us more into the content of like the writing part of our class, now that we've done some brief introductions. So we'll take a quick look here. Okay, so there's a reading from our textbook. It's about 40 pages, which probably sounds long, but the book is laid out and written in a way that it reads quite quickly. There's sort of like graphic stuff or illustrations and things like that, and the style is very accessible, which you'd maybe expect from a creative writing book, right? There's also a first assignment here to take a look at something that you may want to return to, and I want you to be aware of really throughout our course. And it's a slideshow or narrated PowerPoint that set up the rules, quote unquote, of creative writing. So for the longest time as a creative writing student, I felt like there was often the assignment to write something, whether it was a poem or short story or whatever, but there wasn't a lot of really sort of definitive guidance that I got. And so I felt like I wanted to put something together knowing that, you know, it's hard to lay out something like rules for this because it's hardly a science. But there are some guidelines, and what you'll find here is if you click that play button that I just clicked, you can walk yourself through the PowerPoint, but there's these little speaker icons, and there's some audio built in that will sort of explain a little bit what each slide is pointing to. You'll notice that the very last rule, spoiler alert, is that we can always break the rules, which you can probably imagine. But I think these do provide some guidelines, and really they're based on my experience teaching and reading a lot of creative writing work. And so I based the rules on stuff that I've learned, but also kind of like habits that I saw people fall into, or I don't even want to call them mistakes, but just like sort of trends that emerged that I thought were not really productive for good writing. And some of them are pretty obvious. There's lots of overlap between them. And it's something that you'll see in the unit. We have a really brief quiz on low point value, so it's not super important. But really, that's less important than you kind of getting a sense of, like, you know, what the rules are, understanding them a little bit, and then actually, right, trying to put them into practice, whether it's writing stuff that we're doing kind of like exercise writing in the units here, or once, of course, we get to our main workshops, can you put some of those rules into practice? So doing a quiz is kind of like an artificial thing a little bit. It's can you make them happen in an actual short story or poem or whatever it happens to be. And creative writing, like any other kind of skill, is not something that you're just magically born able to do or not able to do. It's one of the myths that we have about it. But like playing the violin or swimming or riding a bike or whatever thing you want to name, building birdhouses, it's a skill that gets better with practice. And oftentimes we practice it by doing, as in a unit like this, for example, or Unit 3 that's coming up, we do them in pieces, or we practice. We don't play like the entire basketball game. We go to basketball practice and do drills. I know, the boring part, right? But it makes us better, more able to perform when it comes to the actual game, the actual big, real performance. Okay, so what we have here is a couple of different discussion boards, thinking about writing, but also why you write and how it works. Our first writing assignment, but also with a reply component, and I'm not going to read through all of that text right now. But remember to finish that one, but also the other discussion board that we've got. So there's a link here to the National Writing Project site on YouTube, so a whole series of videos that kind of asks that question, like why I write, and people post a video. So I want you to watch a few of them, but then I'd like you to consider not necessarily posting to that thing, but actually using that model and producing like a little video of your own. There's even a walkthrough here, so there's a video in my video. If you wanted to, instead of doing a written response to this discussion board, you could do like a video thing. And again, if you've never done one before, this is a perfect time to give it a try, and you'll see how it works in my little tutorial there. We do have the response component again, so yeah, as always, just be really aware of those due dates, and especially for this unit, be aware of kind of the multiple assignments that we have going. Doing the reading, the narrated PowerPoint here, and the quiz that's it goes with it. You can have do the quiz with the PowerPoint right open. It's not like supposed to be a closed book, memorize the rules kind of a thing. And then we have the two separate discussion boards. All right, so as always, if you have questions or concerns, be in touch with me, and I look forward to reading everyone's work on our couple of discussion boards here.